Welcome to the Australian Hiker Podcast, Australia's longest running hiking podcast, downloaded over 1.2 million times worldwide and providing you with an Australian perspective on all things hiking. We're your hosts, Tim and Jill Savage, coming to you from Ngunnawal and Ngambri country.
In today's episode, episode 332, brought to you by Whipper, Australia's pack manufacturer, we celebrate Australian Hiker's 9th birthday. We hope you enjoy. If you'd like to help support Australian Hiker and this podcast, there are a couple of ways that you can help us out. Firstly, by subscribing on your podcast host of choice so that each episode is available as soon as it's published. And if you have the opportunity, leave us a 5-star review. Another way to support us is go to the Australian Hiker website at www.australianhiker.com.au and click on the supporters page and buy us a coffee. You can do a one-off donation or become a monthly supporter. All donations are greatly appreciated and help us to continue producing this podcast and blog. Now let's get on to today's episode. Normally we go through and do a birthday review and a year looking ahead every year. Last year we decided to skip it, but we decided it was time again to reintroduce that for a number of reasons. First up, we're going to look at how last year has gone, and it may appear that we've been a bit quiet over the last year, which is actually the case, and there's a reason for that, which we'll talk about later on. First off, let's look at the podcast. This episode, as it goes to air, is episode 332. And given we also had episode 0, which was a thing you did in those days, we now have 333 episodes published and released. This makes us Australia's longest running and most downloaded hiking podcast. And we've actually had over 1.25 million episodes downloaded. And the download rate puts us in the top 5% of all podcasts worldwide, not just the outdoor podcast.
And that's pretty much something that we've been able to maintain for a really, really long time. That 5% category rating, I think, is pretty impressive. Well, I think it is anyway.
Yeah, and it's one of these sort of things. I mean, 333 episodes, it is a lot, considering that the average podcast only lasts 7 episodes. And for me, depending on what we're actually doing, if we have to write an article that we release as an advice article and then record and edit the podcast, that's roughly about 10 hours work. And I was reading something just recently on one of the industry blogs saying that people spend less time editing videos than they do sound episodes. And yes, I would believe that. Even some of the shortest episodes we do that might be an hour long, for every hour-long podcast, it takes me roughly around about 2.5 to 3 hours to edit. So that 1 hour episode takes 4 to 4.5 hours in total.
Somebody might say that you need to be better at it, Tim, and do it faster.
And believe me, I have been getting faster over the years. But yeah, I've certainly changed how I've done things over the years and get into the run of things. I must admit, I still don't tend to use AI to go through and edit because I find there's still a few quirks when you do use AI, like, oh, we don't want this music, we'll turn it off. Or the space, the silence that we've left deliberately between subjects is disappeared because it's decided it's too long. So I'm sure it'll get there, and I'm sure it'll be something that we tend to use or will use over the next few years, but not so much at the moment.
But we'll use it in an authentic way.
Our worldwide audience now includes 176 countries. And the funny thing about this is we went for a couple of years of not increasing the number of countries. And I think partly for that is that some of these countries are so small physically that they just get lumped in with the larger country next door. But I think they're starting to get more and more selective. So even over the last year, we've picked up about 4 or 5 countries which we'd never come across before. Mind you, some of those might only be 1 episode download. And I'm sure it's probably the diplomatic missions.
An expat Aussie.
That's downloading it there that actually gets us the numbers.
Just feeling a little bit homesick.
Yeah, so thanks very much for that. Our top 10 download countries, the first half really hasn't changed. The second half has. So number 1, Australia. Number 2, US. Number 3, New Zealand. Number 4, UK. And number 5, Canada. So that makes sense given they're all our key English-speaking countries. We then go on to Germany, Japan, Ireland, which is a new one. And again, depending on how you want to view it, Ireland is an English-speaking country as well. But it's a country that's never really appeared in the top 10 before.
No, that's right.
So again, I think it might be a whole batch of expat Australians living there that have keep on listening to us. Number 9 is Singapore, and number 10 is France. So those back end, the last 5 countries really have bounced around and tended to change each year. And partly because that's not huge numbers of downloads, whereas the top 5 tend to be very large numbers of downloads. So as an example, it's roughly about 85% of our audience is Australian, about 6% is US, and then it goes downwards from there between the rest of the remaining countries. Over the last 12 months, our top episodes, or our top 5 episodes have been episode 308, the Snowy's Alpine Walk, episode 303, the Tassie Backbone Walk, episode 315, the Australian Triple Crown episode. Number 4 comes in at episode 311, what to do if you become lost while hiking and what to do to prevent it. And number 5, episode 310, Bibbulmun Track interview with Trudy Marie.
That was a great one.
Yeah, and that was a bit of a revisit, getting someone else's view on the Bibbulmun Track. In relation to our overall episodes, we do have an advice article which has Australian Hikers' top 10 episodes, and that is very heavily dominated by our Bibbulmun Track episodes. And in fact, since that time in 2018, some of those episodes have been downloaded over 6,000 times.
Wow, that's a lot.
And I must admit, I do check the downloads on a regular basis, and all of a sudden you see a jump in particular episodes in certain months. And as an example, the Three Capes Walk, we always get a jump in downloads for those leading up to the Christmas period.
Yeah,
wherever
it's the Christmas walk.
It's the Christmas walk. Bibbulmun Track as well. Normally around about July, August, we get a big increase in the Bibbulmun Track episodes as people start deciding they're going to walk at Bibbulmun Track in springtime. So it's those sort of old favourites do change, but not that often. But certainly the top 5 each year, that Snowy's Alpine Walk didn't surprise me as coming out as our most popular episode.
Yeah, and I must admit, I really enjoyed doing that one. So I'm glad that was me, Tim. I'm on the top of the list for the year.
Now, there were some downsides for 2025. Now, podcasts, we did really well. We released the episodes we planned on releasing over the year. And these days, we're trying to release an episode on average every 2 weeks. I think from this year, we did about 34 episodes or 31 episodes. So we always end up getting more than we planned. I'll talk about what we've got coming up in the coming year. But as far as the rest of the articles, we're a bit light on. So as an example, in 2025, or the year to 2025, we only released 5 walk reviews, whereas in our first year we did about 42.
Yeah.
And I try and do one.
I was pretty tired that year too.
Yeah. And we try and do one at least every second week. So 26 is probably where we're aiming at.
Yeah.
Advice articles was the same, fairly limited number, but I'll talk about those more specifically in a moment. And the gear reviews, again, we probably end up doing about 50 or 60 reviews, but that's less than I would have liked. And there was a reason for that. In fact, there probably are 3 reasons that have slowed us down over the last year.
There were 3 reasons? I thought there was only one, Tim.
So there's 3 things that impacted, and I suppose this is life getting in the way of living, I suppose, is probably the best way to put it. First and foremost, we're in the process of moving house, and that's taken up a fair amount of time, and it will continue to do so for the next month or 2 as we get into the final stages of that. My work, I still work full-time for the moment, and I had been exceptionally busy. All right, and I've probably had the busiest last couple of years that I've ever had due to work. So that's impacted on the time I've had available to do Australian Hiker. And finally, but not necessarily third, was earlier this year, I ended up having a hip replacement.
I said there was a big reason, and it was you.
Now, For those of you that have watched some of our hiking videos, and particularly showing me walking, which we do from time to time in the videos, you would have noticed I had a fairly pronounced limp, and I did.
I cannot believe you've actually admitted that you had the limp, because I was not allowed to talk about the limp.
So it's one of these sort of things that for those of you that have had hip replacements, you'll know what's involved. But in my case, I was treating the symptoms and not the cause. So, and I had tight hip flexors because I had issues with the structure of my hip itself.
You'd ground it away to nothing.
Yeah, and anyhow, it got to the stage, probably the last major walk for us was the Gari Great Walk, and it was really quite funny. It was sort of, I'd certainly slowed down my pace. My pace over the last couple of years has probably been half what it was previously. And my right leg, it was very noticeable when I walked. It was almost at probably not quite a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
It was probably just below that, but it was really obviously going in a different direction. And this is because basically all the cartilage had disappeared. The head of the bone of my femur had been grinding into the hip itself.
And Tim was leaning out of his right hip into the left. So, just accentuating that limp and the discomfort. I mean, you never complained about it, but it must have been really painful at times.
And I think this really came to a head after the Gari walk, where I used to walk to work in the mornings, which is roughly about 3.75 kilometres. And when I came back from the Gari Great Walk and went back to work, I just found that within about 10 to 15 minutes of walking, I just felt physically sick. So that stopped me from doing that. So I finally, after much convincing from Jill, went and saw the surgeon.
You saw someone.
Yeah, went and saw the surgeon, and sure enough, I had the scans done, and he said, look, yeah, your right hip is about 60% functional. Now, I ended up not having the operation until earlier this year, and by that stage, it was a lot worse. So really, it impacted on my ability to do walking. It impacted on my ability to do gear reviews as a result. It
impacted on my ability to maintain my patience with you.
So now I've been, as we record this episode, I'm just a bit over the 6-month mark, and it's interesting talking to people, including the surgeon. They said hip replacement is, from a quality of life perspective, is considered the second most impacting operation. The first one being eye surgery, having the cataracts removed. But certainly there was a huge difference, even within a week or so. I've had friends say to me, you seem to be walking at the pace you used to walk at. And apparently full recovery is not until 12 months, which is May next year.
Yeah, no, definitely your pace has picked up. It's interesting that the limp is still there, but the doctor did say that he could fix the hip, but you had to fix the limp because the muscle memory and also I think a little bit of a habit is something that you needed to get over and be quite conscious about. So can still see a little bit of a limp, but heaps better.
Yeah, and I do use a walking cane, and it's not because I need to. It's more just, as Jill said, I've gotten in the habit of limping because that's what I was doing to favour my right leg, and that's
pushes you back.
And it pushes me back. And funnily enough, if I wear a weighted pack, it's much better because it forces me to use both legs rather than favouring my leg.
Or your glutes as well.
Yeah, so I'm getting there. I'm having to build up a whole batch of muscles, which I haven't used.
You didn't need.
Yeah.
Oh, you thought you didn't need.
So as the doctor said, it's 12 months to full recovery and full push back again. And I will actually release an article at around about the 12-month mark, going through and diarising the changes over the 12 months and the impact that it's had. But certainly, if you're in the same sort of situation, definitely worthwhile getting done because it makes a huge difference. It really does.
Yeah, and if you're not wanting to do it for yourself, do it for the loved ones around you because they'll certainly be happier, that's for sure.
Whipper is an Australian designer and manufacturer of ultralight packs based in the Blue Mountains town of Katoomba and manufactures the best purpose-built performance packs for use in hiking, mountaineering, climbing and canyoning. Leveraging Australian design and manufacturing experience built up since 1981, Whipper uses the most advanced materials available with a minimalist approach that ensures every element serves a purpose. In doing so, they strip away the unnecessary to focus on what truly matters, which is functionality, durability, comfort, and performance, to create packs that, in Whipper's words, are lighter, stronger, and better. So if you want to experience your ultimate hiking adventure, then get yourself a Whipper Ultralight Performance Pack designed and built in Katoomba, Australia. Okay, so what's happening in 2026? I will actually have more time available to do a lot more in 2026. So we've scheduled 34 episodes, including the 2 long-distance hikes I have planned. I still have a backlog of 112 advice articles to draw from, and that builds up faster than I can actually do them. I always come across something and think that's a good idea for an article, and I just keep on adding them. Gear reviews. I've planned to do 100 gear reviews for the 2026 year. And I'll also be continuing my review of reviews. Now, what I mean by that is over the last few years, my intent was to review, particularly the gear reviews, every 12 months. That's now shifted to every 6 months.
Yeah.
And we've got over 400 reviews on there, and it's more just checking on prices and checking on availability. And I think it's really interesting. It used to be I'd get away with a year and that was fine. Now the prices seem to be changing so rapidly.
Quickly, yeah.
If I leave it for a year, all of a sudden a $25 item is now $30. Now it's only $5, but that's also roughly 20%. So it gives me the ability to go through an update to check. And it might be that I don't have to change anything. I just have to check the prices and go from there.
And it's all about, making sure that we're giving as accurately as possible information that is right on point.
We recently attended the trade show in October 2025. I would expect there to be a trade show in 2026, but the date and the location are yet to confirm. And I do have 2 long-distance hikes planned for 2026. A, because I have the time. B, because I've had the hip dealt with. I feel that I'm able to do these longer hikes now. And again, that would explain the reasoning for some of my long-distance hikes, which I failed to complete, the impact on my walking pace and just the impact it had on me.
There wasn't enough time in the world walking at the pace that you were walking, Tim.
No. So for next year, barring bushfires or pandemics or anything unexpected.
Oh, no, don't mention the B word.
The 2 trails I'm planning on doing is the Grampians Peak Trail in Victoria, and I'm looking at roughly April, early May for that one. But again, all things being given equal, that's my aim. And that's actually that's a 160-kilometre walk, and that's going to be my testing walk, if you like, to see how I go with it. I will actually do this walk over 12 days, which is one of the options, whereas normally I might have been able to do that at a much quicker sort of pace. Mm-hmm. But this is one of these walks where you need to book your accommodation. You can't just lob in and just turn up at a campsite without booking. So I'll do it at just 12 days, even if that ends up being a cruisy sort of pace, just to make sure that I'm not pushing myself more than I can possibly cope with, and help build the fitness up.
Well, the thing is that, you can do a single day, and we've done this, a single day of kind of 18 kilometres, but it's the getting up and doing it again the next day, and getting up and doing it again the next day, and getting up and doing it the next day. So, the only way to do that is to get up and do it again the next day.
Yeah. So this will be my testing sort of walk. And again, unless something happens, Victoria does have a lot of bushfires from time to time, and this trail has been impacted by bushfires over the last year. So that's the plan for the first half of the year. In the second half of the year, now still to be confirmed, but I'm looking around about July, August for that sort of date. I do like doing my long distance walks in the middle of winter, particularly that sort of area where you are. And in fact, I should mention the trail first. The plan is to do the Hyson Trail, so South Australia, 1,200 kilometres, And that was originally I was trying to do that in 2020, and COVID did impact on that, thankfully, because I probably wouldn't have been able to do it with the hip even at that stage.
And then you would have been stuck because the state was closed to newcomers. And I think that was part of why you didn't do it. You could probably get in, but you might not be able to get out, and I certainly wasn't going to be able to get in to come and get you.
So that walk pretty much starts at Parinchilla, it starts at two locations, either down on the coast or in Parinchilla, so 1,200 kilometres apart. But I always like to walk south on those ones. For me, that's walking close to home. And I'll be walking through.
Don't know how that's going to work.
Well, home's the airport if I'm in a foreign, in a foreign state.
Okay, well, there's no airport there.
So, but yeah, it's one of those things where you're starting off in desert environment, going through the Flinders Ranges. It will be potentially anything up to 30 degrees during the daytime. It can be sub-zero temperatures at nighttime, and that's typical for the arid regions of Australia. So I prefer to do that in wintertime. The cold I can always deal with. The hot is pretty hard to get away from. And again, with that one, based on how I did the Bibbulmun track, I potentially could have done that walk in probably around about 40 days. Again, I will allow probably 50 to 55 days on this one, so I can take it slower if I need to. And that'll give me a good, and certainly that first walk on the Grampians will give me a much better indication of how I'm travelling.
Yeah. So am I allowed to come on the Grampians Peak Trail with you, Tim?
You are if you want.
Well, I might. I'm thinking I might need to have a bit of a break from my work next year, so I might do that.
Yeah, I suppose realistically, if we can start it on a Friday, or travel down to Victoria, start walking on the Saturday, pretty much. We're probably only looking 2 weekends, and you're back at work a couple of weeks later. So, it's a good option. The distances aren't excessive, and by that, for me, I'm normally quite comfortable when I did the Bibbulmun track of doing 32 kilometres a day averaging, with my biggest day being 44 kilometres. So again, this one will force me to take it a bit slower, make sure I can get into the pace of things. And it will really force me to think about, I always do, but it will force me to think about the gear that I'm carrying to get my pack as light as I possibly can. So in closing, we'd just like to thank everyone for their support over the 9 years that we've been going. We continue to get people supporting us by sending us thank yous or saying thanks for what we're doing. We really do appreciate it. We also from time to time get people buying us a coffee to help offset the costs in running this blog and podcast, and we do greatly appreciate it. We get a good indication of what people want and what people like. And certainly I am looking forward getting back into the long distance hikes and getting back into doing more reviews, more advice articles. And as I said, hopefully next year, or in fact, next year I will have more time, particularly in the first half of the year, to go through and get that done.
Yeah, and I'd like to reinforce what Tim was saying, but also emphasise the support that we've had over this past year. We haven't been as active as we were in previous years, but also as we would have liked. And we talked about the reasons why that might be the case. But, pretty much the hip replacement was the big thing, because it's pretty hard to go hiking when you've got a dodgy hip, and, those who have had a dodgy hip would know that. So thanks for staying with us and, growing with us, because that's the other really good thing. We haven't just stayed still in terms of the support that we've received from people. So we have grown. So, that's a pretty big endorsement for us, and something that we're proud of.
So that's all for this week's episode, brought to you by Whipper, Australia's pack manufacturer. So thank you again for staying with us. That's all for me. Bye for now.
And bye from me.